Hello everyone. In today's video I'm going to talk about tungstens, and specifically I will talk about jig-off and classic kind of beads, and for that purpose I'm going to use a dry fly hook in size 16, slotted bead and jig-off bead. And I want to show you pros and cons of both of these beads because I think it's very interesting to know how and when to use each of them, and if there is any way I prefer one of them. So without any further ado, let's just get into the discussion. So let's start with slotted tungsten 3.5mm 16 hook dry fly. Reason I'm using dry fly hook here is because it penetrates fish more easily, because thinner wire makes less resistance when it gets into fish's mouth. But that's not important here. Important is how we use tungstens. So how we use slotted tungsten on various hooks. In this case it's regular hook, like classic hook, and as you can see here, almost half of the hook shank is occupied by the tungsten, meaning that effectively we cannot make size 16 fly on the same size hook. Also, tungsten occupies a little bit of the gap here, making it narrower, and in theory making this less effective fly, meaning that it will hook less fish. It's not drastic. I don't think it matters too much, but it does affect hooking rate when you compare it to the jig-off, and I will show that in a minute or two. Those kind of tungstens, slotted and classic, you can find them easily everywhere in so many colors and sizes that it is incredible. So they're very available, and you can't invert all hooks with slotted tungsten. You can invert jigs 100%, curved more or less, and classic hooks so not so many times, especially if classic hooks are with a straight eye. With bent eye like this, they may invert a little bit. Now, when it comes to jig-off is not as readily available as other kinds of tungsten, but jig-off has its own advantages. Another disadvantage of jig-off is a little bit more fussier method of securing it to the hook shank so it doesn't rotate around, because slotted tungsten has a slot. In jig hook it just fits in and it doesn't move so much, but it also doesn't have as many sizes and colors as slotted one, but it can invert any hook, literally any hook. So whether you put it on a curved scud hook or a straight shank hook or jig hook, it will invert any kind of hook. It only needs to be fixed nicely. Most importantly, it leaves gap of the hook open, and look at the size of this body. Now let me just compare this for you. We have this much of the body for the jig-off, and then compare it with this little guy. It's like 3 millimeters less, more or less 3 millimeters less, which is huge difference on the hook this size. So for some of you it may make a difference, for some of you it doesn't, it may not, but just something to consider. Let me just give you side by side view. As you can see, it's like super big difference. I do like to fish flies like this, oversized bead on a small hook with very small body, meaning that I'm imitating something super small. But when I don't want to imitate something super small, I want to have something like this, if you get what I mean here. Now let's start tying fly and get over this maybe boring part for you guys. As I was saying, there are two holes in tungsten here, and you may put the hook through this hole with this indent over here, or you may go regular way, going through this more narrow hole without this indent. I like to do the opposite, well, the first option, going with the hook through this indent hole, and reason for that is I have smooth surface over here to work with. I can push it with thread against the hook eye, and I can make figure of eights around here, and that's how I fix the bead. So I will run GSP by Semperfli nanosilk. I'll run it through the wax to make it less slippery. Oops. I want to make it less slippery because I don't want fly to rotate when I start cinching down the thread. Okay, I'll go back and then around the eye and making those figure of eights around here a couple of times. Then you can make 1, 2, 3. You don't need to count obviously, but make those circles around and then go a little bit more than the previous time, making more contact with the hook shank, and then again hop, hop, hop. Use as much force as you can here. That's why GSP is very helpful here, and having it very thin, I will not build up almost any excessive bulk over here, and I will secure this pretty much solidly with this many reps. If I was using something heavier, the buildup would be too much at this point. Now here you can see that it's almost vertically down. On jig hooks it can go almost horizontally, like those balanced kind of flies, or you can just omit figure of eights here and just push it with thread, make a thread them over here and drop of super glue. That would also help. So there are a couple of ways to skin a cat, I guess, for every technique here. Now, one of my favorite materials for tails is Coq de Lion. I like the stiffness, I like the markings here, I like everything about Coq de Lion because it's like just amazing material for tails. If you watch Spanish people, how they tie flies, they use this for dry fly wings. I haven't tried that yet, but it looks amazing. Now, okay, I have my tail positioned on the top. Now what I want, I like to wrap my wire and materials in conventional way, meaning that if I place wire on my near side, the wire will go over the tails and it will push them away. If I place wire or any other material that I'm gonna wrap on the far side of the hook, it will go immediately under, avoiding the tails, and over here. So let me show you so it will make much more sense. Just for the purposes of me having less trouble, I'll twist the bobbin holder counterclockwise and I'll twist the hook towards me so I can see what I do better. Okay. Now, I could have done this, like just a couple of reps here, preventing the bulk, but since I'm using thin thread, I don't have to take care of bulk that much. Now it's time to put some body material, and this is, as I was saying, Condor substitute. It's very long, so I'll snip off the tip part because it's very weak, and I'll use it as I would use biot, so this shiny side will face downwards. What I like to do is, again, counter spin the bobbin holder so the thread jumps to my left, and then I'll just put it on the top of the wire. So it's not going over the wire, like wire and then here this Condor substitute, just on the top. Okay, and the reason will be obvious quite soon. I'll make a little bit of taper over here. Okay, you can use super glue to make everything a little bit more durable. Okay, I like to make this taper a little bit here, and as you can notice, I made a gap over here that I will not fill in with anything. Okay, I'll catch this with hackle pliers and start wrapping. So first wrap goes under the shank. In this case it's over because it's inverted, but it doesn't touch the tails. So as I advance forward, I'm moving away from the tails without touching them, which doesn't displace those tails, and I'm moving in touching turns, making this nice segmented body. And body as such is already very beautiful. So the reason why I'm using wire to rip it is to make contrasting colors, and more importantly to make it more durable. Okay. That's one, two. No need to put more. Got the excess. Now let me show you where is the wire over here. You can notice the wire here being away from the tails again because it will go under, but it's easier for me to fit the wire in between of these in these gaps. So I can't see it clearly because it's super tiny. So what I do here, I pull the wire to make it, to pull it where I want it, and then making the same angle as when I was wrapping the Condor substitute, I wrap the wire. You try not to think too much where you place it, just try to repeat the process and it should go in between. Now I have done what my intention was. So I have a little bit of olive, a little bit of white contrasting. It's like double. It's more or less copper john with gills. Now I will create dubbing loop over here. And after this video I will use some grease to avoid squeaking bobbin holder. Now my favorite dubbing twister, the heavy one, some Peacock dubbing that I showed already in the video, and a little bit of dubbing, just tiny little bit of dubbing, making very thin noodle. We don't need much thorax to cover, just this little part over here. Okay, and I have 2.5 centimeters. CDC, the shape of the CDC is not important. It's important that you don't use too much. I'll place it in a clip. And I'm placing it in a clip so that the radius is a little bit away from the clip. I'll show you the reason. So when I place it like this, and when I twist everything, the short side of CDC barbs will fold around the thread and it will be locked. So twist the dubbing twister, and then when I twist it, just pull tight everything so it locks inside. And then I start wrapping. Okay. You can literally use wrap over wrap, and as you can see I'm pulling it tight. Another reason to consider using GSP. Now I have loop and I have thread, and what I like to do, I like to wrap them around each other so slippery thread doesn't slip when I cut the loop. It just enhances durability a bit, not much, but I don't know, I want to make my flies as durable as possible. Now I'll slide my knot, you will see now, down the bead, down the bead, down the bead, and tighten it. And that would be finished fly. So guys, I hope you learned something in this video. I made a decision between buying jig-off classic or slotted tungsten bead a little bit easier for you guys, and I hope you will use this fly, try to use it, because this is a wonderful pattern for all sorts of fish. So thank you very much for watching. Until next video, tight lines and keep safe.